guys, Nick here with another tutorial, basically how to make a character talk. I know how it's done. It's usually mega complicated, is a ton of manual labor, but I was experimenting with Character Animator to try to make this work and try to make things a little easier on myself. So if you're not familiar, Adobe released Character Animator as a side program. It's in the beta stages right now. They released it alongside of Creative Cloud 2015 with After Effects. So if you have After Effects 2015, then chances are you have Character Animator on your computer and you might not even know it. If you're like me, you saw this when it first came out and was like blown away, like this is so awesome. It uses your webcam to kind of record motions. It can use your face, your webcam to record your facial expressions, including your mouth, and you can rig up characters specifically for Character Animator. I was blown away at first, and then about a week later, I was kind of scratching my head as to how I would actually use this and work it into my workflow. So a lot of the tutorials I saw out there were kind of like, hey, make this cool cartoon with the Character Animator and then bring it into After Effects. But I typically start in After Effects and then, hey, if I could use Cinema 4D to add something to my After Effects project or Character Animator, then great. It's just a tool. I don't see myself really starting in Character Animator. So I think what I've found is a pretty reasonable workflow for taking my characters that are already animated, already rigged up for After Effects, and then using Character Animator to, kind of do the heavy lifting on this talking bit. So I'll show you kind of my workflow, and hopefully you'll, find it useful. And by the way, this is a tutorial I found on making your first cartoon, and it kind of shows you how Character Animator works. Pretty awesome, but we're going to just focus right on the mouth movements, and we're going to scrap the rest of it. Alright, so I'm getting into a project. This is part of a bigger project I'm working on, but this is one part that kind of applies to us. I have this character flying in, and she's talking about the power of algebra. And right now I have just a static mouth, and it's pretty boring. So let's check it out.
Hi, I'm your algebra superhero, and together we'll tackle the power of algebra.
So yeah, there's a lot I can do to this, but I'm at the part now where I've kind of keyframed just the movement of the character and how it's going to be framed. And the first thing I could do to make this better is to animate the mouth so it's just not this static open mouth. You can go the old school cheap kids route and just make the mouth bigger and smaller, but I want better than that because it's completely reasonable for a client to say, hey, can you make the mouth of this character move? Make it just more engaging. So the first thing I have to do is to get the audio out of here. The audio for reference that we're going to use in Character Animator. So this is where I ran into my first problem because you can't just go the old school Command Control M and then go to AIF. You should be able to do this, and perhaps in a couple months when Creative Cloud 2016 comes out, this will work. But this actually does not work right now. It's a known issue, and this will output a blank audio file. So what I got to do is I have to get this AIF out of here so I can use it for reference. So first thing I'm going to have to do is go to File and go to Export and add to Adobe Media Encoder Q. What I might recommend, this is I've kind of consolidated the project down to, this is in and out point is what I want to work on. But if this was part of a bigger timeline and you might have a 3-minute timeline, but only 10 seconds of it is the actual line, you might want to just take a adjustment layer or something like that and then just kind of crop it to where you're exporting, just so when you go back to it, you'll know that this is, the reference line. So if you move your in and out point, over here, you'll know that, this is the actual line. And you have a definitive start and end point. And you're going to need that when you're kind of resyncing the mouth back into the character. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But for now, we're just going to use the beginning and end point of the comp and going to export, add to media encoder. It takes a second, and I already have this kind of queued up, but it's AIF 48K, and I'm going to have it go to my character animator folder, start a new folder called audio. I'm going to say superhero line 1. You might have a better workflow for this. This is just what I found works right now. So save and run it. So the next step is you have to have a mouth for the character, and you have to kind of design that already. So I've already done this. Let me see, superhero mouth template. And this is, you can read some other tutorials or look at some other tutorials on how to rig this. I kind of started with what was included with Character Animator. They throw in a couple characters from the start to play around with. So you can actually open those characters and take what you want and then modify it. So the template kind of works like this. It goes character is a layer, and then a sublayer is plus mouth, and then you have 13 groups or sublayers underneath that kind of are every other kind of expression. So you have your neutral, you have your smile, you have your surprised. These kind of don't really matter unless you are using your webcam for the animation, which we're not. We're going to sync it to audio. So, they're there and it's fine. It's not hurting anything. You really just need your neutral. Like if the smile and the surprise were to go away, it's fine. You might want to just kind of design it, because if you needed to insert a smile or insert a surprise look, you have it there. Then you have your basic vowels and consonant sounds. So you have ah, you have D, E, and so forth. And basically with these 13 different expressions, it's going to comp together the illusion that this character is talking. So check this out. I think I'll include a link so you can play around. It's pretty tricky. Like, this is really where the skill takes place, is designing this, because if you get it off where the mouths don't look the same, or they look weird, they're not true to the what they're supposed to represent, you can get some really funky results. It doesn't look like they're talking at all. But for now, I have this. I already know it works because I've done this before. So here we go. We'll save it and bring it into Character Animator. So here we are in Character Animator. If you're opening it for the first time, you probably have a bunch of screens kind of with tutorials guiding you through. I think they're great. They're going to show you a lot about how to use your webcam to animate, and that's cool. It's cool to play around with. But again, we're talking about starting in After Effects and then moving on to Character Animator to kind of help us as a tool. So let's import our assets. File, import, and let's see here. My superhero mouth template. And I'm going to import my audio as well. So Character Animator audio, superhero line 1. And just going to drag these two onto the timeline. So I've already set my timeline up so it's just kind of 500 by 500, which is what I made the mouth file, but you might have something different. If you need to adjust this, go up to the scene 1 that's been created and modify it. So width and height, you can do the duration, which will come in handy later. You might also want to modify the frame rate because I think by default it's 12, but I'm working in 24 frames per second with my After Effects comp. So you want to make it the same. So if you're working in 30, make it 30 or whatever. The other weird thing is if you go to, you'll notice that it placed it really strange in this lower right corner. So I'm going to click up here in the project viewer, the mouth template, and then go down to transform and just kind of center this thing. And I'll just do it by eye. So great, kind of in the center here. And right now it's actually this mic icon, it's actually listening to what I'm saying, and it could animate it if it wanted to, but I'm actually going to use the auto lip sync. So I have my audio here and my template. Oh, there we go. Now we're syncing. It's pretty amusing. So on the timeline, click on your mouth template, go up to Object, and compute lip sync from the scene audio. It's going to work. And just to check it back, and it's going to keep doing this. Hit play.
Hi, I'm your algebra superhero, and together we'll tackle the power of algebra.
All right, it looks pretty good to me. I've done it with some different samples and stuff like that, and it doesn't come out quite as expected. So you really need a really clean, crisp, audio sample. And suppose that you had like the wrong audio sample in, and you needed to redo it. You needed to bring something else in, a different line or something. If you click this arrow, you can see where the input is. So you could, X that out and start fresh. But for now, this looks pretty good. So let's export it. Go up to File, go to Export, and Scene Video Only. That's all we need. And we'll resync it back in After Effects. And I'll go to Images. I will just call this Superhero Line 1. And this is actually going to make a folder in the Images folder with a bunch of PNGs for each frame, and we're going to import it as a PNG sequence. This is awesome if you're used to working in 3D. This is how you kind of render for 3D as well. But this is also the bad side of working in Character Animator, because if I did a whole lot of animation in here, I can't just import that project into After Effects and work with it. It's set in stone, it's a PNG sequence, and that's all I'm going to be able to work with. I'm not going to be able to modify it. So it's great for stuff like this in my opinion, but I wouldn't want to go too heavy on the animation because I want that flexibility. So let's hit save, and you can see my PNGs here, and it's just a heck of a lot. So let's go back into After Effects now and re-import this. Go to Import, and then go to Images. Here's that folder I was talking about. Click the first one and make sure that PNG sequence is checked. Open. So now we have this sequence. I assure you it works perfectly just like a movie file. The one thing you're going to have to do is, if you notice at the top here, it's showing this at 30 frames per second, and we know that when we were working, we set this to 24 frames. So that's no issue. It just it's just how After Effects works. It just sees this PNG sequence and assumes something, and sometimes it assumes wrong. So we're going to correct it. Right click, interpret footage, and go to main, and assume it's 24 frames instead. And that will just make sure that, you know, everything stays in sync and we don't have any weird syncing issues. So the first thing we got to do is just kind of lay it on top of all this. And now we have this weird mouth here. And I'm going to break this into two because I have this character in two different scenes, in two different compositions. So what I'm going to do is just hit Shift Command D and split it. And that way we know this one's for the first comp and this second one is for the second comp. So what we'll do is Command X, go to the superhero 1, and just Command V. And now we have this mouth in here, and we just got to kind of size it to where the mouth is. Oh, sorry, I have two things selected. Sorry, I can just delete that. All right. It's good to have like a nice just reference, so you kind of get an idea. And just scrolling through, it looks pretty normal, so just going to leave it there. And I can actually take these position and scale settings and hit copy. I might have to actually do that again, because I'm going to copy this guy into the superhero 2. Let's actually just check what we have. How about that?
Hi, I'm your algebra superhero, and together we'll tackle the power of...
Alright, that looks pretty good to me. I've had some issues where sometimes I gotta just move this a frame back, just like one frame back, to get it to sync correctly. I'm not sure why. It just kind of sometimes looks a little better. So play around, but you know this is exactly synced to what you imported, so it's not a bad place to start. So let's go back and go to the second sequence and Command X, go into superhero 2, Command V, and then it's going to kind of paste in there at the wrong spot. In case you didn't know, this cursor is kind of true to whatever comp you're in. So if you're at this spot in this comp and then you go into this pre-comp, the cursor is going to be in the same spot relatively speaking. So if it's over here and I go into this comp, it's going to be right where it would be in the master comp. If you follow what I'm saying, I don't feel like I'm not explaining that very well, but for right now, let's go to the start of that comp, and let's go in there and then just sync that up to the very front of that. And I'm going to hit the left bracket to make sure that syncs up. Left bracket key does that. Alright, so go back to superhero 1. I can take this position and scale and Command C and Command V, and it copies it into the same spot. Let's turn off our reference mouth. And, yep, that looks pretty good.
Hi, I'm your algebra superhero, and together we'll tackle the power of algebra.
Alright, that looks pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I've found this to be super useful. It's not always perfect, but I think it 100% makes me a better animator in less amount of time, which is more than I can ask for. I hope Character Animator gets more awesome. I hope they keep progressing on it. But for right now, it's just a kind of a cool toy. And the thing about cool toys is that they're cool, but you got to kind of work them into your workflow. So you know, hope you found this useful. There's a ton that Adobe has provided on the traditional use of Character Animator, and I think it's great. But I think it's not ready for prime time. They probably know that, but this is making my life easier. So until next time, thanks for watching, and see you later.